What if your greatest challenges were actually your most valuable opportunities? That's the radical truth at the heart of Stoicism, a philosophy that doesn't just help you endure hardship, but teaches you how to thrive because of it. Marcus Aurelius, the legendary Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, put it perfectly when he wrote, "The obstacle is the way," 4 simple words that flip adversity on its head, revealing it not as something to fear, but as the very path to strength. Think about that for a moment. Every setback, every frustration, every moment life pushes back, it's not a barrier. It's the training ground where resilience is forged, where perspective shifts, and where real growth happens. That's the power of Stoic wisdom. It doesn't just prepare you for life's storms, it shows you how to dance in the rain. This isn't about passive acceptance or gritting your teeth until the pain passes. Stoicism is a call to action, a challenge to rise above the chaos and take control of what's truly yours, your mindset, your choices, your response. Imagine facing any problem with unshakable calm, not because you're ignoring it, but because you've learned to see it differently. What if you could transform anxiety into focus, frustration into fuel, and uncertainty into curiosity? That's what happens when you embrace the core principles of Stoicism: resilience in the face of setbacks, clarity about what you can and can't control, and the wisdom to reframe every situation as a chance to grow stronger. Today, we're diving deep into these timeless tools, not as abstract ideas but as practical weapons you can wield in your daily battles. Whether you're struggling with stress, self-doubt, or a situation that feels impossible, Stoicism offers more than comfort. It gives you a blueprint for action. This video isn't just about understanding philosophy, it's about putting it to work. By the end, you'll walk away with strategies to turn obstacles into advantages, to meet pressure with poise, and to reclaim the power that's always been yours. So ask yourself, what if the thing holding you back is actually the thing that propels you forward? Let's find out. The first weapon in your arsenal isn't willpower or luck, it's your mindset. And Stoicism teaches us that this is where every battle is won or lost before it even begins. Epictetus, the former slave turned philosopher, put it bluntly: men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. In other words, pain is inevitable, but suffering, that's optional. It all comes down to perception. Think of 2 people stuck in the same traffic jam. One white-knuckles the steering wheel, fuming at the wasted time. The other sees it as a chance to listen to an audiobook or reflect on their day. Same situation, entirely different experiences. That's the power of framing. Now apply that to your biggest challenges. What if that project that fell apart wasn't a failure but a masterclass in what not to do next time? What if the criticism that stung was actually a roadmap for improvement? This isn't positive thinking, it's strategic thinking. The Stoics called it the art of ascent, the practice of consciously choosing how to interpret events rather than reacting on autopilot. Modern psychology backs this up. Studies show that people who view stress as enhancing, a sign their body is preparing for action, actually perform better under pressure. Here's a simple exercise to put this into practice. Grab a challenge you're facing right now, something that feels like a roadblock. Now ask, what's one way this situation could actually be serving me? Maybe that difficult coworker is teaching you patience. Maybe the delayed promotion is pushing you to build new skills. The key isn't to pretend it's easy, but to mine it for value. Because when you shift from "why is this happening to me" to "what can this teach me," you stop being a victim of circumstances and start becoming their student. That's the Stoic mindset, not just enduring life's blows, but learning to roll with them like a martial artist, using their energy to propel you forward. Here's where Stoic wisdom slices through modern overwhelm like a scalpel. The recognition that most of what weighs us down isn't ours to carry. Seneca, the great Stoic teacher, put it this way: we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Think about that. How much mental energy do you waste on hypothetical disasters, other people's opinions, or outcomes you can't dictate? The Stoic dichotomy of control is your antidote, a simple but brutal filter for cutting through the noise. It asks one question: is this within my power to change? If yes, act. If no, release it. Picture this: you've spent weeks preparing a pivotal presentation at work. The morning of, technical glitches delay your start. A key colleague calls in sick, and halfway through, you notice two executives whispering in the back row. The old you might spiral, fixating on the tech team's mistakes, resenting your absent coworker, interpreting those whispers as criticism. But the Stoic approach: you acknowledge the hiccups, then zero in on what's yours to command. Your delivery, your adaptability, your choice to see the whispers as curiosity rather than judgment. The projector isn't your domain, your focus is. This isn't passivity, it's precision. Ancient Stoics compared life to archery. You control how you draw the bow, your stance, your aim. But once the arrow leaves the string, wind, luck, even a wandering spectator could alter its path. Obsessing over the uncontrollable won't steer the arrow, it'll just drain your focus from perfecting the next shot. Modern research echoes this. Studies on workplace stress show that employees who distinguish between controllable and uncontrollable factors report higher job satisfaction and lower burnout. Try this today. Grab paper, draw a line down the center. On the left, list what's truly in your hands: your effort, your preparation, how you treat others. On the right, what isn't: traffic, others' moods, stock market swings. Then do something radical. Physically cross out the right column. Those aren't your burdens to bear. Every time your mind wanders there, snap it back to the left side with a question: what's one small action I can take right now? That's the Stoic shift from passenger to pilot, reclaiming agency where it actually exists. Marcus Aurelius didn't just face obstacles, he courted them. While most of us instinctively recoil from difficulty, the Stoics leaned in, treating adversity like a blacksmith treats fire, the very thing that tempers steel. In his private journal, the emperor wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That's the ultimate reframe, not just making peace with hardship, but recognizing it as the hidden curriculum of greatness. Contrast that with today's culture, where comfort is king and struggle is something to algorithmically avoid. We optimize for convenience, medicate discomfort, and scroll past anything that requires effort. But the Stoics would argue we're missing the point entirely. Life isn't about dodging storms, it's about learning to sail. Take Thomas Edison. When his lab burned down in 1914, destroying years of research, he didn't collapse under the weight of the setback. He stood in the ashes and told reporters, "There's value in disaster. All our mistakes are burned up. Now we can start fresh." Within weeks, he'd rebuilt, and within months, he delivered the phonograph. That's the Stoic reframe in action, seeing destruction not as an ending but as a forced reset, an invitation to innovate. Modern science backs this mindset. Studies on post-traumatic growth show that people who consciously extract meaning from adversity often emerge stronger, more creative, and more resilient than before their struggles began. So here's the challenge. Pick one obstacle in your life right now, something you've been resisting or resenting. Maybe it's a financial squeeze, a strained relationship, or a project that's hitting roadblocks. Now ask, how could this actually be fuel? Could that tight budget teach resourcefulness? Could that difficult person be mirroring a blind spot you need to address? The obstacle isn't just in your way, it is the way, and the moment you stop fighting it and start using it, you unlock a form of leverage most people never discover. Because the real power of Stoicism isn't just in enduring what life throws at you, it's in transforming those very throws into the momentum that propels you forward. Imagine holding a priceless vase, your most cherished possession. Now picture it slipping from your hands, shattering on the floor. What happens next? That moment of heart-stopping loss, the flood of frustration or grief. That's where Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who lived as a slave, drops his most liberating truth. It's not the vase that breaks you, but your grip on it. Stoic detachment isn't about numbness or indifference. It's about recognizing that pain comes not from events themselves, but from our insistence that things should be other than they are. That broken vase was always fragile, always temporary. The suffering, that's the tax we pay for forgetting reality. This ancient insight mirrors modern mindfulness in surprising ways. Therapists today teach patients to observe without clinging, to notice thoughts and emotions like clouds passing, without attaching identity or permanence to them. Neuroscience backs this up. Brain scans show that when we label emotions without judgment, simply saying, "I notice I'm feeling anger," we activate the prefrontal cortex, dialing down the amygdala's panic signals. The Stoics were pioneers of this mental shift centuries ago. Seneca wrote letters advising friends to rehearse loss before it happened, to mentally walk through the worst-case scenarios, not to dwell in pessimism, but to sand down the sharp edges of shock when life inevitably unfolds differently than we hoped. Here's the practical magic of this mindset. Think of a goal you're fiercely attached to, a promotion, a relationship outcome, a financial milestone. Now imagine whispering to yourself, "I'll pursue this with all my skill and effort, but my peace isn't held hostage by the result." That's detachment in action. It turns desperation into determination, fear into focus. Consider elite athletes. Studies show that those who perform best under pressure aren't the ones obsessed with winning, but those who focus purely on the process, the next serve, the next stride, while holding outcomes lightly. Your turn. Grab a pen and finish this sentence. "I've been clinging to as if my happiness depends on it." Maybe it's a grudge you can't release, a dream that hasn't materialized, or someone else's approval. Now ask, what would change if I treated this like that Stoic vase, appreciating its value but remembering its fragility? The goal isn't to stop caring, but to care more wisely, to invest your energy where it truly grows, not where it drains. Because when you loosen your grip on what you can't control, you free up your hands to grasp what matters most, your choice to respond with clarity, courage, and unshakable inner freedom. Seneca once wrote, "Bravery isn't the absence of fear, it's action in spite of it." That distinction is everything. Stoic courage isn't about feeling invincible. It's about moving forward even when your knees shake. Think of the last time you hesitated to speak up in a meeting or avoided applying for that role because you doubted your qualifications. That tension. It's not a stop sign, it's the starting line. The Stoics recognized fear as nature's way of sharpening your focus, not shackling your potential. Now let's be clear, this isn't about reckless leaps. Ancient Stoics weren't adrenaline junkies, they were strategists. Calculated boldness means weighing risks like a chess player, not a gambler. Take public speaking. The person who volunteers to present despite their nerves isn't ignoring the fear, they're channeling it into preparation. They rehearse more, anticipate questions, and turn shaky hands into steady conviction. Contrast that with the coworker who wings it unprepared, mistaking overconfidence for courage. One approach builds competence, the other courts disaster. Here's where Stoicism flips the script on modern hustle culture. Society often glorifies those who fake it till they make it. But real courage thrives on honesty, admitting you're afraid while refusing to let that fear dictate your choices. Consider Eleanor Roosevelt's approach to her paralyzing shyness. Instead of avoiding the spotlight, she scheduled a public speaking event every day for a year. By leaning into discomfort, she didn't erase her fear, she outgrew it. Modern psychology confirms this. Exposure therapy works because repeated action rewires the brain's threat response. Your challenge this week: pick one arena where fear has been whispering, stay small. Maybe it's finally negotiating a raise, publishing that blog draft, or confronting a difficult conversation you've avoided. Don't wait for the fear to fade. That's like waiting for the ocean to calm before diving in. Instead, borrow the Stoics' premeditation technique. Visualize the worst-case scenario: awkward silence. Rejection, then mentally rehearse your calm response. When you realize you can handle even the worst, fear loses its fangs. True courage isn't a personality trait, it's a series of decisions. Every time you act despite fear, you're not just achieving an outcome, you're proving to yourself that discomfort isn't fatal. That's the secret Seneca knew: bravery compounds. The more you exercise it, the more natural it becomes, until one day you look back and realize what once terrified you has become the very thing that makes you unstoppable. Epictetus drew a line in the sand 2,000 years ago that still cuts through the noise of modern life. Some things are up to us, some are not. But he took it further. The real trap isn't just confusing control with chaos, it's mistaking hollow cravings for genuine needs. The Stoics called this the discipline of desire, the art of separating what nourishes your soul from what merely numbs it. Natural desires, food when hungry, shelter in a storm, meaningful connection. Vain desires, the dopamine hit of social media validation, the 20th pair of sneakers, the obsession with appearing successful rather than becoming skilled. Consider today's consumer culture, a machine engineered to turn wants into needs. Advertisers don't sell products, they sell emotional relief. That new phone isn't just technology, it's the promise of belonging. The luxury car isn't transportation, it's a talisman against insecurity. The Stoics saw this coming centuries ago. Seneca warned, "It's not that we have so little time, but that we lose so much of it chasing what we've been conditioned to want." Modern research confirms this. Studies on hedonic adaptation show that the thrill of new possessions fades within months, yet we keep climbing the same treadmill, mistaking movement for progress. Here's where Stoicism becomes revolutionary. It doesn't demand austerity, it offers clarity. Try this experiment for 24 hours, fast from vain desires. When the urge hits to scroll mindlessly, buy impulsively, or complain about trivial inconveniences, pause. Ask Epictetus' razor-sharp question: is this within my control, and does it serve my growth? That moment of space between impulse and action, that's where your freedom lives. Now take it deeper with a desire audit. Grab paper and make 3 columns. First, list what you genuinely need to thrive, basics like health, purpose, authentic relationships. Next, jot down habitual cravings, things you pursue out of boredom or societal pressure. Finally, the most revealing column. Note what you're sacrificing in column 1 to feed column 2. Maybe it's sleep for late-night scrolling, savings for status symbols, or presence for productivity theater. The gap between these lists isn't judgment, it's liberation waiting to happen. Because here's the paradox the Stoics uncovered. When you stop wanting the wrong things, the right things come into focus. Like adjusting a camera lens, the discipline of desire doesn't remove what you see, it clarifies what's always been there. That promotion you're chasing. Maybe what you truly want is respect, the perfect body, perhaps it's control in a chaotic world. The moment you trace desires back to their roots, you reclaim the power to meet those needs directly without the exhausting detours. This isn't about having less, it's about wanting wisely. The ancient Stoics lived this. Musonius Rufus, the teacher who influenced Epictetus, ate simple meals not to punish himself, but to prove luxury wasn't required for joy. His satisfaction came not from the food, but from the knowledge that his happiness was unshackled from external conditions. You don't have to renounce modern comforts to practice this, just interrogate them. Next time you reach for your wallet or your phone, ask the Stoic question: is this desire a bridge or a burden? The answer might surprise you. Marcus Aurelius never let himself forget the sand slipping through the hourglass. In his private writings, he jolted himself awake with this reminder: you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Not morbid, liberating. That ticking clock isn't your enemy. It's the metronome setting the rhythm for what truly matters. The Stoics didn't see mortality as a dark cloud, but as a spotlight, exposing the difference between being busy and being alive. Think about how differently we approach time today. Social media scrolls stretch minutes into hours. Meetings meander without agendas. We say someday to dreams while treating trivial tasks as emergencies. Contrast that with the Stoics' fierce immediacy, what Seneca called living each day as if it were your last, but tending your garden as if you'd live forever. It's the balance between urgency and intention. Benjamin Franklin embodied this. His daily schedule, preserved in his autobiography, allocated hours for learning, creation, and reflection, every block purposeful. He didn't just manage time, he honored it like a finite currency. Here's the pivot point: procrastination isn't laziness, it's fear in disguise. We delay writing that book because facing the blank page means facing our self-doubt. We postpone tough conversations to avoid potential conflict. The Stoics cut through this by asking, what's the cost of waiting? Every day you defer action is a day you hand your agency over to circumstance. Your challenge starts small. Identify one habitual time waster, maybe the 30 minutes lost to morning notifications or the evening TV autoplay trap. Now apply Seneca's razor. How much of your life have you actually lived? Replace that void with one intentional act. Read 7 pages of a philosophy book, draft that email you've avoided, or call someone who sharpens your mind. Time won't slow down, but your grip on it can tighten, because the secret isn't having more hours, it's refusing to let the ones you have slip through your fingers like smoke. Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius during one of Rome's coldest winters, "Fire tests gold, adversity tests the strong." He wasn't just offering comfort, he was revealing one of Stoicism's most counterintuitive truths. Pain isn't life's interruption, but its curriculum. Think of an athlete mid-workout. The burn in their muscles isn't a sign they're failing, it's proof they're evolving. Every ache signals fibers breaking down to rebuild stronger. That's the Stoic crucible, the understanding that hardship isn't something to escape, but the very heat that forges resilience. Consider the story of David Goggins, the Navy SEAL who transformed from an overweight exterminator into one of the world's toughest endurance athletes. His memoir isn't a catalogue of triumphs, but a raw account of suffering, freezing hell-week swims, stress fractures during ultramarathons, the agony of pushing past perceived limits. What kept him going? The same principle Seneca taught. Pain becomes purpose when you stop resisting it and start listening to it. Those grueling moments weren't just obstacles, they were mirrors showing him who he could become. This isn't about glorifying suffering, it's about recognizing its hidden curriculum. When a weightlifter struggles under the barbell, they don't curse the iron, they respect it. The weight isn't their enemy, it's their teacher, revealing weaknesses to address and thresholds to surpass. Modern psychology confirms this. Studies on post-traumatic growth show that individuals who reflect on their struggles with curiosity rather than resentment often develop greater empathy, deeper gratitude, and heightened problem-solving skills. Your turn. Recall a recent setback, a rejection, a failure, a disappointment. Instead of asking, "Why me?" ask, "What's this revealing?" Maybe that missed promotion exposed a skill gap you've ignored. Perhaps a strained relationship highlighted boundaries you've neglected to set. The Stoic practice isn't to dwell in the pain, but to distill wisdom from it. Grab a notebook and complete this sentence. This hardship taught me, not a platitude but a concrete insight, like how you discovered resilience during illness or learned patience through delays. Here's where most get stuck. We treat pain like a storm to outrun rather than a terrain to navigate. But the Stoics mapped it centuries ago. Discomfort is the price of growth, and avoidance is the cost of stagnation. Like a climber developing calluses to grip the rock better, your struggles aren't just wounds, they're the toughened skin that lets you hold on longer next time. Seneca put it bluntly, difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. The question isn't whether you'll face adversity, but whether you'll let it harden you or hone you. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, didn't just teach philosophy, he lived it, and one of his most radical practices wasn't about action, but inaction. He believed the wisest words often come from the quietest mouths. Picture this: in ancient Athens, debates raged in crowded marketplaces, with everyone fighting to be heard. But Zeno, he'd sit in stillness, absorbing arguments before offering a single, razor-sharp insight. His restraint wasn't weakness, it was a superpower. Fast forward to today, where we drown in a world of hot takes, tweet storms, and compulsive sharing. The average person spends over 2.5 hours daily on social media, much of it broadcasting half-formed thoughts. The Stoics would ask, when did we confuse volume with value? Silence isn't just the absence of noise, it's the space where clarity grows. Think of a judge in a courtroom. Their authority doesn't come from dominating the conversation, but from knowing when to listen and when to speak. That's Stoic restraint in action. Seneca described it as leaving the best part of a conversation unsaid, not out of timidity, but because some truths need room to breathe. Modern science backs this up. Studies show that people who pause before responding in negotiations achieve better outcomes, while those who interrupt or overshare often undermine their own credibility. Here's where it gets practical. Try a daily silence hour. No talking, no typing, no reacting, just observing. You'll start noticing patterns. How often you speak to fill awkward gaps. How quickly you defend opinions you haven't fully examined. How much energy gets wasted on conversations that don't serve you. The Stoics called this prosoph, the practice of mindful attention. It's like mental decluttering, creating space to distinguish between what's worth saying and what's merely noise. Your challenge this week: become an anthropologist of your own speech. Carry a small notebook and tally how many of your words fall into 3 categories: necessary, kind, or true. The ancient Stoics believed if a statement didn't hit at least 2, it wasn't worth uttering. You might discover that half your conversations are on autopilot, reacting rather than responding. But here's the magic: when you speak less, your words carry more weight. That colleague who never listens suddenly leans in when you talk. That argument that used to spiral now ends with a single, well-placed question. Social media trained us to treat silence as emptiness, something to be filled with emojis and updates. But the Stoics knew better. Like a painter working with negative space, they understood that what you withhold shapes what's seen. Your voice isn't measured by how often it's heard, but by the impact it leaves when it finally speaks. So next time you reach for your phone to vent or post, ask Zeno's question: will this add light or just heat? The answer might surprise you, and the world around you will notice the difference. Marcus Aurelius faced more scrutiny than any viral tweet storm. He ruled an empire where senators whispered behind his back, citizens second-guessed his decisions, and history itself would judge his legacy. Yet his personal writings reveal an almost eerie calm about others' opinions. "It never ceases to amaze me," he wrote, "we all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." That's the Stoic shield in action, not battling judgment but rendering it powerless through indifference. Fast forward to today, where cancel culture turns minor missteps into career wildfires, and social media metrics equate likes with worth. The ancient antidote: recognize that another person's opinion has no more weight than you choose to give it. Take Taylor Swift's evolution through public perception, vilified as a serial dater, mocked for her earnest songwriting, then criticized for speaking out politically. Instead of reshaping herself to fit each wave of judgment, she doubled down on authenticity, even naming an album, Reputation, to reclaim the narrative. Like a Stoic, she didn't ignore the noise, she simply stopped letting it dictate her steps. Neuroscience validates this approach. Studies show that when we fixate on criticism, our brain's pain centers activate as if we've been physically hit. But when we practice cognitive distancing, viewing opinions as mere data rather than truths, we regain control. This isn't about stubbornness or arrogance. The Stoics drew a crucial distinction between feedback, which can sharpen you, and verdicts, which aim to define you. Imagine a chef who adjusts recipes based on trusted taste testers, but ignores diners who hate all spicy food. One refines their craft, the other drowns in futile attempts to please incompatible palates. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly: if someone told you that certain people were speaking ill of you, wouldn't you defend yourself? Yet if they're speaking the truth, why be upset? And if they're lying, why bother? Your turn. Recall a time someone slapped a label on you: lazy, dramatic, too much. Maybe it came from a boss, a family member, or an anonymous comment. Now ask, did that judgment reveal more about them or you? Like carrying a backpack filled with others' opinions, every step grows heavier until you learn to unshoulder the weight. Try this Stoic exercise today. Write down one unfair judgment you've carried, then physically tear it up. As the pieces fall, so does its power, because the ultimate freedom isn't changing minds, it's realizing you never needed their approval to begin with. Epictetus watched reeds bend in storm winds without breaking and saw in them a masterclass in resilience. Make your principles like the reed, he advised, firm in root but flexible in form. That image cuts through centuries of human struggle, whether you're a Roman merchant navigating political upheaval or a modern entrepreneur facing AI disruption. Because here's the truth: storms don't destroy the rigid oak and the yielding reed equally. One snaps under pressure, the other dances with it. Look at how Netflix pivoted from mailing DVDs to streaming when broadband exploded, or how bookstores that resisted becoming community hubs folded while others thrived. Darwin wasn't wrong when he observed that survival favors not the strongest but the most adaptable. The Stoics took this further. Adaptability isn't just a survival skill, it's the art of thriving through change by treating every shift as raw material rather than ruin. Consider the Japanese concept of kintsugi, where broken pottery gets repaired with gold lacquer. The cracks aren't hidden, they're highlighted. That's Stoic adaptability in physical form, recognizing that breaks and repairs don't diminish something's value, they become part of its story. Modern psychology confirms this mindset's power. Studies on cognitive flexibility show that people who view change as opportunity rather than threat report higher creativity and life satisfaction. Your challenge starts small. Identify one area where rigidity has been your default. Maybe it's clinging to outdated productivity methods, resisting feedback on a pet project, or avoiding new technologies that intimidate you. This week, experiment with controlled bending. If you always outline work meticulously, try improvising one task. If you dismiss ideas outside your expertise, explore a tutorial in an unfamiliar field. Like training a muscle, adaptability strengthens through measured strain. The reed survives not because it's fragile, but because it understands a truth the oak misses. Resistance and resilience aren't the same. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is sway. Seneca began each morning with a ritual more powerful than any cup of coffee. Before his feet touched the floor, he'd whisper, "This is another day the gods have granted me." Not a generic affirmation, but a deliberate grounding in the fragility of time itself. The Stoics didn't practice gratitude because it felt nice. They wielded it as armor against life's sharpest arrows. Imagine waking with that mindset, not scrolling through notifications, but confronting the raw gift of existence before your first breath. That's the difference between checking a box and sharpening a sword. Contrast this with today's entitlement epidemic, the quiet rage when traffic adds 10 minutes to a commute, the outrage culture that treats minor inconveniences like moral violations. Social media amplifies this, training us to notice lacks rather than abundances. A study in the Journal of Positive Psychology found that people who scroll before bed experience significantly lower gratitude levels compared to those who journal. The implications are stark. We're outsourcing our attention to algorithms designed to provoke dissatisfaction, then wondering why contentment feels elusive. Here's where Stoic gratitude becomes revolutionary. It's not about ignoring life's harshness, but about building emotional calluses against it. During his exile on Corsica, a punishment that would break most, Seneca wrote letters describing the island's natural beauty and the unexpected freedom found in reduced circumstances. He wasn't delusional, he was disciplined. Modern research validates this approach. Veterans practicing gratitude exercises show remarkable resilience against PTSD symptoms, while hospital patients who maintain gratitude journals report faster recovery rates. The common thread: adversity loses its sting when met with conscious appreciation. Try this 3-gift practice tonight. Before sleep, name 3 specific things from your day that didn't have to exist but did. Not vague generalities like family, but concrete moments, the way sunlight hit your desk at 3 p.m., the stranger who held the elevator, the fact your heart beat 25,000 times without you reminding it to. This precision matters. Neuroscientists find that detailed gratitude activates the brain's medial prefrontal cortex, the same region responsible for resilience during stress. Now for the challenge. Grab paper and list 5 ordinary blessings you've taken for granted, things so constant they've become invisible, your knees bending. Electricity humming behind walls, the miracle of language allowing these words to enter your mind. That's the Stoic secret. Gratitude isn't just for good fortune. It's a lens revealing fortune where others see baseline reality. When Seneca wrote, "No man is crushed by misfortune unless he has first been deceived by prosperity," he was warning that entitlement isn't just annoying, it's fragile. True strength comes not from expecting the world to be kind, but from recognizing it already is in ways we've stopped seeing. The next time frustration bubbles up, when the Wi-Fi lags or the coffee spills, pause. Ask yourself, is this truly suffering or just life refusing to meet my unexamined expectations? That split-second question is where Stoic gratitude transforms from philosophy to power. Because appreciation isn't passive, it's the ultimate act of defiance against a world that wants you always hungry for the next thing. The Stoics knew you don't need more to be thankful. You need to notice more of what you already have. Cato the Younger didn't just practice patience, he weaponized it. While Rome burned with corruption and short-term ambition, this Stoic statesman stood like an oak in a storm, refusing to compromise his principles for momentary gain. Plutarch recounts how Cato would deliberately wear outdated clothing, walk barefoot through snow, and eat simple meals, not as performances of austerity, but as daily drills in mastering desire. In a world chasing quick wins, his life screams a counterintuitive truth. Real power comes not from getting what you want now, but from training yourself to want differently. Fast forward to today's overnight success industrial complex. Social media feeds us highlight reels of instant fame, viral hits, and rapid riches carefully edited to hide the years of unseen grind. The average TED talk gets distilled to a 15-second clip. The decade of failed experiments behind it gets left on the cutting room floor. Even our language betrays us. We hack productivity, crush goals, and disrupt industries as if meaningful achievement could be microwaved. Behavioral economists call this present bias our brain's tendency to overvalue immediate rewards while discounting future payoffs. The Stoics diagnosed it centuries earlier, mistaking the spark for the flame. Consider compound interest the closest thing to magic in finance. A single dollar invested at 7% interest becomes $7 in 30 years. But here's the catch: the first 18 years only earn you 3 of those dollars. The real growth happens in the final third of the journey. That's Stoic patience in numerical form. Warren Buffett didn't build Berkshire Hathaway by chasing quarterly wins. He did it by thinking in decades. Same principle applies to skills, relationships, or personal growth. The guitarist practicing scales daily for 5 years doesn't just play better, they rewire their brain's neural pathways. The writer drafting 500 words every morning doesn't just produce a manuscript, they reshape how they see the world. Your challenge: start a 6-month patience project. Not some vague resolution, but a concrete commitment with 2 rules. First, pick something that compounds: learning a language, strength training, mastering chess. Second, track progress weekly, not daily. Why? Because real growth happens in the spaces between measurements. Like a bamboo plant that spends years building an underground root system before shooting up 90 feet in 6 weeks, your breakthroughs will come when the daily grind feels invisible. Cato's endurance wasn't about suffering, it was about strategy. He knew what modern science confirms: willpower is a muscle that strengthens with use. Every time you choose the harder but wiser path, salad over takeout, study session over scrolling, difficult truth over comforting lie, you're not just making a decision. You're sculpting a mindset. The irony: delayed gratification eventually becomes its own reward. Ask any marathon runner, the joy isn't just in finishing, it's in becoming someone who can. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who shaped Epictetus, lived by a radical principle. The more we possess beyond our basic needs, the more we give tyranny material to work with. He wasn't just advocating for empty shelves, he was revealing how clutter, whether physical or mental, becomes a prison of distractions. Picture a traveler burdened with suitcases at every step versus one moving freely with just a backpack. That's the difference between a life weighed down by excess and one sharpened by simplicity. Today's digital age has magnified this struggle. The average person checks their phone 96 times a day, not because they need to, but because they've trained their brain to crave the noise. What Musonius recognized 2,000 years ago, modern science now confirms: clutter drains focus while space cultivates clarity. Take the story of Sarah, a former marketing executive who hit burnout juggling 3 streaming subscriptions, 2 overflowing closets, and a phone buzzing with 14 group chats. Her turning point came during a power outage that left her without Wi-Fi for a weekend. With no notifications to chase, she read an actual book cover to cover, cooked meals without multitasking, and slept through the night. That accidental detox became permanent. She deleted apps that didn't serve her, donated clothes she hadn't worn in a year, and replaced scrolling with sketching. Within months, her creativity at work surged, not because she'd gained something new, but because she'd stopped losing herself in the unnecessary. Here's the Stoic secret: minimalism isn't about deprivation, it's about discerning what actually deserves your attention. Like a sculptor chipping away marble to reveal the statue within, removing distractions exposes the life you're meant to live. Start small today. Open your junk drawer, your cluttered desktop, or your packed calendar. Find one thing: a half-used notebook, an old subscription, a recurring meeting that no longer serves its purpose, and let it go. Not tomorrow, now. That single act does more than clear space. It sends a message to your brain: I decide what matters. Because here's the truth Musonius knew: every unnecessary item you own, every digital distraction you tolerate, is a tiny vote for chaos over calm. But the reverse is also true. Each intentional release is a rebellion against the world's constant whisper that more is always better. The Stoics didn't just clean their homes, they curated their minds. And in a culture that confuses busyness with importance, that might be the most radical freedom of all. Epictetus looked at the chains binding his leg and saw what most miss: the difference between physical slavery and mental freedom. Born a slave, he taught a truth that still shatters modern excuses: no man is free who is not master of himself. That's the Stoics' ultimate power move, recognizing that while you might not control your circumstances, you always command your choices. Consider two co-workers stuck in the same toxic job. One drowns in complaints, waiting for management to change. The other audits their skills, networks quietly, and pivots to a new role within 6 months. Same environment, radically different outcomes. Why? Because the second person grasped what Epictetus knew: ownership isn't about your starting point, it's about your next move. Victim mentality whispers that life happens to you. Stoicism roars back: life happens through you. When Steve Jobs was ousted from Apple, the company he founded, he didn't wallow. He founded NeXT, bought Pixar, and returned a decade later with skills that revitalized Apple into a $1 trillion giant. That pivot wasn't luck, it was self-ownership in action. Modern psychology confirms this mindset's power. Studies on locus of control show that people who believe they influence outcomes internals outperform those who blame external forces externals in nearly every metric, from career success to stress management. Here's where most get stuck. They confuse quitting with pivoting. Quitting says, "This is too hard," and walks away. Pivoting says, "This isn't working, how can I redirect my energy?" One is escape, the other is evolution. A restaurant owner during the pandemic who shutters their doors and blames the government is quitting. The one who transforms their dining room into a meal prep hub for busy families. That's Stoic adaptability meeting opportunity. Your challenge starts today. Pick one area where you've been waiting for permission to leave a relationship, launch a side hustle, or set a boundary. Now claim it, not with grand gestures but with quiet authority. When Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do," he wasn't offering motivation, he was issuing a command. Write down one decision you've been outsourcing to others' opinions or circumstances. Maybe it's staying in a graduate program you hate because everyone expects it, or tolerating a friend's constant negativity out of guilt. Now draft your declaration of independence. I own my. Fill that blank with your next move, not your complaint. Because here's the secret the Stoics wielded like a sword. the moment you stop asking, "Why won't they?" and start asking, "What will I?" you cease being a passenger in your life and become its driver. The road might still have potholes, but now your hands are on the wheel, and that changes everything. Seneca, the philosopher who faced exile and political turmoil, kept an unexpected weapon in his Stoic toolkit: laughter. Amidst his writings on hardship and virtue, he slips in this gem: we should take humor seriously. Not as comic relief, but as cognitive armor. Picture him in his dimly lit study, surrounded by scrolls, finding mirth in human folly while Rome crumbled outside. That's Stoic levity, not ignoring the storm, but whistling as you build your arc. Fast forward to modern comedians like Tig Notaro, who turned her cancer diagnosis into a legendary stand-up special, or Hassan Minhaj weaving immigration struggles into punchlines. Their genius isn't just making light of darkness, it's using laughter to rob suffering of its oppressive weight. Here's the science behind the strategy. When you laugh at a fear, your brain undergoes a subtle but profound shift. The amygdala, your threat alarm system, dials down its panic signals, while the prefrontal cortex, your rational commander, takes the wheel. Researchers at Stanford found that patients who used humor to reframe medical procedures reported 30% less pain. The Stoics intuited this millennia ago. Mockery isn't denial, it's defiance. By finding absurdity in adversity, you're not pretending it doesn't hurt, you're proving it doesn't own you. Your turn. Pick one worry gnawing at you. Maybe it's your micromanaging boss or a dating app ghost. Now imagine describing it to a friend as if it were a sitcom subplot. So this guy keeps scheduling meetings to discuss meeting schedules. It's like he's trapped in a corporate Groundhog Day. That shift from frustration to irony doesn't solve the problem, but it rewires your relationship to it. Like a judo flip for emotions, you're using the weight of the situation against itself. Consider the worst-case comedy exercise. Write down your deepest fear about a current challenge, then exaggerate it to ridiculous extremes, afraid your startup will fail. Picture yourself selling hand-drawn, "I tried" merit badges to investors. Terrified of public speaking, visualize the audience throwing marshmallows instead of tomatoes. This isn't avoidance, it's exposure therapy with a punchline. By playing out the nightmare as farce, you drain its terror like pulling venom from a wound. The Stoics reserved their sharpest wit for life's cruelest jokes. When a heckler taunted Antisthenes about his ragged cloak, he shot back, "I'll write your name in the lining, then at least you'll be close to greatness." That's the alchemy at work, transforming insult into art. Your daily irritations might not be material for the comedy seller, but they're raw gems waiting for your polish. So today, when traffic steals 30 minutes or your Wi-Fi betrays you, try this grin and whisper, "Ah, the universe has sent me another comedy sketch." Because resilience isn't just about standing tall in the storm. It's about learning to dance in the rain and occasionally splashing in the puddles. Marcus Aurelius kept a journal not to record his triumphs but to interrogate his struggles. What stands in the way becomes the way wasn't just a mantra, it was a mirror. He believed adversity doesn't distort who you are, it reveals who you've been all along. Think of a tree in a hurricane. The storm doesn't create weak branches, it exposes them. That's the Stoic secret. Your hardest moments aren't anomalies, they're X-rays showing the structure beneath the surface. Consider the paradox of job loss. For some, it's a death blow to identity. I was my title, my salary, my business card. For others, it's the catalyst that finally pushes them to launch that bakery, write that novel, or go back to school. Same event, radically different outcomes. Why? Because crisis doesn't define you, it clarifies you. When the late chef Anthony Bourdain lost his first kitchen job to addiction, he could have spiraled into self-destruction. Instead, he channeled that raw honesty into writing Kitchen Confidential, a memoir that revolutionized food journalism. The adversity didn't change him, it uncovered the storyteller hiding behind the line cook. Here's your mirror moment. Grab paper and answer this. What's one challenge that keeps resurfacing? Chronic procrastination, toxic relationships, self-sabotage at career peaks. Now ask the Stoic question, what if this isn't happening to me but for me? Maybe that tendency to procrastinate isn't laziness, but a sign you're pursuing someone else's goals. Perhaps attracting toxic partners reveals an unhealed wound, mistaking drama for passion. Modern psychology calls this pattern recognition. The Stoics called it waking up. Try this 3-step audit from Epictetus' playbook. First, describe your challenge objectively, no villains, no victims, just facts. Second, trace its roots. When did this pattern first appear? What did it protect you from then? Finally, the pivot. How could this very struggle be preparing you for a future only you can see? Because here's the truth the Stoics carved in stone. The obstacle revealing your weakness today is the gym where your strength gets built tomorrow. When J.K. Rowling faced welfare checks and rejected manuscripts, she didn't just persevere, she later reflected that rock bottom became the foundation for rebuilding. That's the mirror at work. Your adversities aren't roadblocks, they're truth tellers showing you where to grow next. So the next time life hands you a storm, don't just weather it, study it. The reflection staring back might surprise you. Seneca once retreated to his country estate not to escape life, but to see it more clearly. Sometimes even to live is an act of courage. He wrote during one such withdrawal, recognizing that stepping back isn't surrender, it's strategy. Today's tech titans understand this ancient wisdom. LinkedIn's Jeff Weiner schedules thinking time blocks in his calendar. Twitter's Jack Dorsey takes silent meditation retreats. These aren't indulgent breaks, they're tactical resets, the modern equivalent of Seneca's countryside reflections. The paradox, in a world that glorifies non-stop hustle, the most strategic move might be standing still. Consider how elite athletes approach training. They don't just grind through endless reps, they cycle between exertion and recovery because muscles grow during rest, not strain. Your mind operates the same way. Neuroscientists at the Max Planck Institute found that breakthrough insights often emerge during downtime, when the brain's default mode network activates, those moments in the shower or on a walk when solutions suddenly appear. The Stoics anticipated this science by millennia. Marcus Aurelius would begin his days not with frantic activity, but with premeditatio malorum, quietly anticipating challenges to fortify his responses. Here's where modern life sabotages us. We've replaced Seneca's retreats with productive multitasking, listening to podcasts while commuting, scrolling news while eating, watching TV while folding laundry. This constant stimulus leaves no space for the mind to synthesize, prioritize, or innovate. A Stanford study revealed that people who multitask actually accomplish less and retain poorer information than those who focus sequentially. The solution isn't working harder, it's pausing smarter. Your challenge: block 1 hour this week for a strategic pause. Not meditation unless that's your aim, not journaling unless it helps, but pure, unstructured reflection. No agenda, no devices, no shoulds. Like a CEO reviewing quarterly results, assess 3 areas: what's working, what's draining, what's no longer serving you. If this feels uncomfortable, that's the point. We've become addicted to doing at the expense of thinking. The Stoics knew better. Their secret weapon wasn't relentless action. It was the space between actions where wisdom took root. Think of a chess grandmaster. Their power lies not in moving pieces faster, but in knowing when not to move at all. Your life deserves the same strategic patience. Schedule that hour like you would a critical meeting, because it is. The Roman general Scipio Africanus would spend entire days alone in his tent before major battles. When questioned, he replied, "I'm preparing to win. Your retreat isn't avoidance, it's preparation for the battles that matter." The Stoics didn't whisper about death, they stared it down like a sparring partner. Memento mori, their blunt Latin reminder, remember you must die. Far from morbid, this practice was their secret weapon for urgency. Picture Seneca writing letters by candlelight, fully aware that any breath could be his last. That awareness didn't paralyze him, it propelled him. Contrast that with today's culture, where we hide aging behind filters and treat mortality like a glitch in the system. We sanitize death, tuck it away in hospitals, and binge Netflix to avoid its whisper. But here's the paradox: the more we run from death's shadow, the more it stretches across our lives, draining our days of meaning. Steve Jobs nailed this Stoic truth in his Stanford commencement speech. After his cancer diagnosis, he described how remembering that I'll be dead soon became his clearest compass for decision-making. That's memento mori in action, not as a morbid fixation, but as a lens that strips away trivialities. Neuroscientists confirm this effect. Studies show that when people confront their mortality, even subconsciously, like writing their own eulogies, they experience a cognitive shift called post-traumatic prioritization. Suddenly, grudges seem petty and postponed dreams feel urgent. Take Derek, a former Wall Street trader who survived a skydiving accident when his parachute malfunctioned. Those 90 seconds of freefall didn't just change his priorities, they rewired his perception of time itself. Within a year, he'd left finance to teach wilderness survival, not because he'd become fearless, but because he'd stopped waiting for someday. His near-death epiphany mirrored Marcus Aurelius' journal entry. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. Here's your challenge. For one day this week, live as if it's your last, not with reckless abandon, but with razor focus. Skip the bucket list theatrics. This isn't about skydiving or steak dinners. It's about the quiet choices, pausing mid-argument to really hear your partner, savoring your morning coffee like it's a sacrament, deleting that passive-aggressive email draft. The Japanese call this ikigo iki, treasuring each moment as a once-in-a-lifetime encounter. When you stop treating time as infinite, you start spending it like currency that actually matters. The Stoics knew something we've forgotten. Death isn't life's opposite, it's life's compass. Your mortality isn't lurking in some distant future. It's sitting beside you right now, tapping its watch. The question isn't whether your time will run out, but whether you'll finally start living before it does. Epictetus didn't just teach philosophy in a vacuum, he built a school, recognizing that wisdom grows in the soil of the right relationships. His advice was blunt. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish by those who live differently. Translation: your circle isn't just company, it's curriculum. Jim Rohn's modern twist: you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. It isn't just a motivational quip, it's neuroscience in disguise. Studies show our brain's mirror neurons unconsciously mimic the behaviors, attitudes, and even stress levels of those around us. That's why the Stoics didn't just manage their thoughts, they curated their tribes. Take 2 aspiring writers. One joins a critique group where members dissect each other's work with razor precision. The other hangs with friends who nod politely but scroll phones when pages are shared. Fast forward a year, guess whose craft sharpens? It's not about talent disparity, it's about environment engineering. Ancient Stoics called this sympatheia, the interconnectedness where your community's ethos seeps into your bones. Modern researchers call it social contagion. Whatever the label, the principle holds. You don't just choose your friends, you choose your future self. Time for a toxic relationship audit. List the 5 voices that dominate your mental real estate, not who you wish influenced you, but who actually does. The coworker who fuels your ambition or the one who gossips at the coffee machine. The sibling who challenges your growth or the one who mocks your aspirations. Be ruthless, as Epictetus warned. The key is to keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best. This isn't about cutting people off, it's about consciously allocating your attention. That childhood friend stuck in victim mode. Maybe lunches shift from weekly to monthly, with boundaries around complaint marathons. Now the pivot. Identify one mentor gap in your life. Not a vague someone smarter, but a specific role. A business strategist, a parenting guide, a spiritual anchor. Then take stoic action. Reach out to that industry leader whose newsletter you read, not with a generic pick your brain ask, but a specific question about their latest project. Join that mastermind group you've been eyeing, even if it means sacrificing Netflix funds. Remember, Seneca apprenticed under Attalus, Marcus Aurelius had Rusticus. Even philosophy's giants stood on shoulders. Your turn, because here's the truth the Stoics etched in stone. Growth isn't a solo pilgrimage. It's a relay where the right hands pass you the torch and the wrong ones try to blow it out. Surround yourself with those who fan flames, not fingerprints. The rest, let them become scenery, not sculptors of your life. Musonius Rufus didn't just tolerate cold baths, he prescribed them. The Stoic teacher insisted his students strip down and plunge into icy waters, not as punishment, but as a masterclass in mastering discomfort. How can a man prove his courage if he's never faced hardship? He'd ask. Fast forward to modern-day daredevil Wim Hof, whose ice baths and breathing techniques have turned ancient Stoic practice into a viral movement. The connection. Both understood what neuroscientists now confirm. Voluntary discomfort isn't masochism, it's mental armor. When you choose to shiver, your brain learns a crucial lesson, that you can endure far more than your instincts suggest. Think of it like a fire drill for your nervous system. Your body's panic when hit with cold water mirrors its reaction to life's unexpected shocks. A missed deadline, a harsh critique, a financial setback. But here's the twist. By training with controlled discomfort, you rewire your threat response. A study in the Netherlands found that people practicing cold exposure daily for 2 weeks reported significantly lower stress levels and increased willpower. Their bodies didn't change, their perception of stress did. That's the Stoic edge, transforming your relationship with adversity before it strikes. This isn't about becoming immune to discomfort. It's about recognizing it as a signal, not a stop sign. Picture 2 co-workers handed impossible deadlines. One spirals into anxiety, convinced they'll crumble. The other breathes deep and starts typing, their brain conditioned by years of early workouts and cold showers to interpret pressure as focus fuel. Same challenge, radically different experiences. Musonius would nod knowingly. He saw this play out in Roman bathhouses centuries ago. Your challenge starts tomorrow morning. Turn the shower knob to cold for the final 30 seconds. Not a gentle chill or proper teeth chattering cold. Notice what happens. Your first instinct will be to flee. Your second, to realize you're still standing, still breathing, still capable. That revelation is the seed of resilience, but here's the key. Don't just endure it, lean into it. As the water hits, say aloud, "This is my training." Because every second you stay under that icy stream, you're not just building tolerance for discomfort, you're proving to yourself that you command it. Now expand the principle beyond the shower. What's one comfort you can voluntarily sacrifice this week? The snooze button. The third, scroll through social media before bed. That extra helping you don't need but want. Each small denial is a rep in the gym of your mind, strengthening your ability to choose long-term gains over short-term gratification. Hoff didn't climb Everest in shorts because he ignored discomfort. He did it because he befriended it. Your cold shower isn't the end game. It's the warm-up for life's bigger freezes. When rejection stings, failure looms, or doubt whispers, you'll have already faced down the cold and laughed, and that changes everything. Seneca sat in his study at 60, still scribbling questions in the margins of his scrolls, not because he lacked answers, but because he cherished the chase. As long as I live, he wrote, I'll keep learning how to live. That's stoic humility in action, the recognition that expertise isn't a summit to reach, but a path that never ends. Contrast this with today's fake it till you make it culture, where LinkedIn profiles inflate skills and Instagram feeds curate perfection. The Stoics would call this more than dishonesty, it's self-sabotage. Because the moment you believe you've arrived, you stop growing. Take two software engineers. One coasts on decade-old coding languages, insisting their experience trumps new methods. The other, equally veteran, spends weekends experimenting with AI tools they don't fully grasp, not to impress, but to stay uncomfortably curious. Guess who gets tapped for groundbreaking projects? Modern research confirms this. A Stanford study found that employees who adopt a beginner's mindset learn new systems 40% faster than those clinging to expert identities. It's not about competence, it's about posture. The first engineer sees ignorance as a threat, the second sees it as fertile ground. Consider Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's reinvention. At 28, his wrestling career peaked. At 30, Hollywood told him he'd never act. Instead of doubling down on what he knew, he leaned into what he didn't, taking acting classes with teenagers, studying scripts like a rookie, even accepting humbling bit parts. That pivot from most electrifying man in sports entertainment to struggling newcomer wasn't just brave, it was stoic. He traded the armor of expertise for the vulnerability of a student, and it made him the highest paid actor alive. Your turn this week. Deliberately become a novice, not in something easy, but in a skill that makes you fumble, a language where you mispronounce basics, a dance style where you step on toes, a software that outpaces your keystrokes. Why? Because discomfort is the tuition for growth. Seneca didn't praise learning for knowledge alone. He prized the humility it cultivates. Every time you suck at something new, you're depositing resilience into your psychological bank. Here's the secret the Stoics uncovered. True mastery isn't about accumulating answers, but nurturing questions. The oak tree that refuses to bend snaps in the storm. The bamboo, hollow and yielding, weathers every gale. Your expertise is only as strong as your willingness to sometimes feel foolish. So grab that guitar, that textbook, that pottery wheel, and let yourself be gloriously, transformatively bad. The path to wisdom begins where your comfort ends. Marcus Aurelius kept a journal not to vent his anger, but to dissect it. When insulted by senators or betrayed by allies, he didn't lash out. He reached for his wax tablet and wrote with clinical precision, "What is this emotion trying to teach me?" That stoic anger alchemy, transforming fury's fire into fuel for growth. His method wasn't suppression, it was investigation. One famous entry dissects a frustrating encounter like a scientist examining a specimen. When X criticized me, was there truth in his words? If yes, I must thank him. If no, his opinion is irrelevant. Modern therapists call this cognitive reappraisal. The U.S. Marine Corps teaches a nearly identical technique in their resilience training, pausing to label emotions before reacting. The common thread: anger isn't the enemy, unchecked reaction is. Consider the story of Samantha Power, former U.S. U.S. ambassador to the UN. During a heated Security Council debate, a Russian diplomat launched a personal attack, accusing her of hypocrisy. Instead of firing back, she did something extraordinary. She smiled. Later, she explained her strategy. "I imagine my anger as a chess piece. If I let them provoke me, they've won the move." That's Stoicism in action. Power didn't ignore her rage. She weaponized its energy into razor-sharp diplomacy, ultimately outmaneuvering her opponent. Studies of elite negotiators reveal this same pattern. The most effective aren't those who feel no anger, but those who channel its intensity into strategic focus. Your turn. Grab a notebook and pick one recurring anger trigger. Maybe it's your partner's messy habits or a coworker's interruptions. Now channel Marcus with a 3-step autopsy. First, describe the incident objectively, like a courtroom transcript. At 8:15 a.m., I saw unwashed dishes in the sink for the 3rd time this week. Second, interrogate the emotion. Is my frustration about the dishes or feeling unheard? Finally, the pivot. What constructive action could this anger fuel? Maybe it's a calm conversation about shared responsibilities or setting a new house rule. The goal isn't to extinguish the fire, but to redirect its heat toward forging solutions. Modern anger management often focuses on calming techniques, deep breaths, counting to 10, useful tools, but the Stoics went deeper. They understood that anger is often a secondary emotion, masking deeper vulnerabilities. When someone cuts you off in traffic, the surface rage might hide embarrassment at feeling powerless or fear of losing control. Aurelius' journaling exposes these root causes. Try this reframe next time your blood boils. Imagine your anger as a misdialed phone call. The energy isn't wrong, it's just being directed to the wrong number. Your job isn't to hang up, but to redirect the connection where it belongs. The diplomat who keeps cool under fire, the parent who transforms a child's tantrum into a teaching moment, the leader who channels outrage into reform, they're all practicing Stoic alchemy. Your anger isn't something to fear or suppress. It's a signal flare, illuminating what you care about enough to fight for. The question isn't whether you'll feel rage, but whether you'll let it burn you or light your way. The Stoics didn't just theorize about hardship, they rehearsed it like actors running lines. Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men, would intentionally dress in shabby clothes and sleep on a hard floor for days at a time. He called it paupertas experimentum, the poverty drill. This wasn't self-punishment, it was stress testing his resilience. Fast forward to Silicon Valley, where billionaires like Jack Dorsey fast for days or Elon Musk sleeps in factory offices during production crunches. The common thread, voluntary discomfort as a vaccine against life's inevitable shocks. Imagine your electricity suddenly cut out for a week. Most of us would panic, but the Stoics would ask, what if this isn't a crisis but a drill? Modern psychology confirms the wisdom here. Researchers at the University of Minnesota found that people who periodically practice deprivation, digital detoxes, cold showers, or even just skipping morning coffee report higher gratitude and problem-solving creativity. It's as if temporarily removing comforts reboots your appreciation for them while proving you're tougher than you thought. Here's where it gets practical. Try a no-spend weekend, no takeout, no Uber, no online shopping. Not to save money, but to reset your relationship with consumption. Notice what happens when you cook with pantry staples instead of door dashing, or when you swap streaming for library books. At first, it might feel like lack, but soon you'll detect something unexpected: freedom. The freedom of realizing how much you don't need, and how much mental space gets freed when you're not constantly deciding what to buy next. Take it further with a Stoic survival day. Pick one modern convenience: your smartphone, caffeine, even electricity after sunset. and go without it for 24 hours. The goal isn't to prove you're above comforts, but to discover they're not the glue holding you together. Like a fire drill for your adaptability, these experiments reveal your hidden capacity to thrive with less. The billionaire's version: Warren Buffett still lives in the same Omaha house he bought in 1958 for $31,000. IKEA founder Ingvar Kamprad drove a 15-year-old Volvo and haggled at flea markets. Their frugality wasn't stinginess, it was a daily reminder that wealth is a tool, not our identity. When you periodically strip away excess, you're not preparing for poverty, you're vaccinating against the fear of it. Your challenge starts small. This week, choose one austerity experiment: a cold shower, a silent commute, or a meal of just rice and vegetables. Pay attention not to what you're missing, but to what surfaces in its absence: resourcefulness, presence, or even humor. Because the Stoics knew something modern life obscures: true security doesn't come from stockpiling comforts, but from knowing, deep in your bones, that you'll be okay without them. Epictetus, the philosopher who endured slavery, didn't ask, "What's in it for me?" but rather, "What can I leave in my wake?" His words cut through centuries of self-interest. What's good for the hive is good for the bee. That's legacy thinking, the Stoic art of stretching your gaze beyond your lifespan, measuring success not by what you accumulate, but by what you contribute. Consider the environmental activists chaining themselves to bulldozers in the Amazon. They aren't fighting for clearer skies in their own neighborhoods. They're waging war for generations they'll never meet. That's Stoic legacy in its rawest form: planting trees under whose shade you'll never sit. Take the story of Chuck Feeney, the billionaire who secretly gave away his entire fortune, $8 billion, to education and healthcare, then retired in a modest apartment. While peers built yachts, he funded scholarships for strangers' grandchildren. His mantra: "I want the last check I write to bounce." Feeney didn't just donate money, he engineered a ripple effect. A single scholarship recipient might cure a disease, inspire a movement, or raise children who shift the culture. That's the exponential math of legacy. Your actions today compound in ways no spreadsheet can predict. Here's where most stumble. We confuse legacy with monuments, named buildings, viral posts, plaques on park benches. The Stoics smirk at such vanity. True legacy isn't about carving your name in stone, but etching wisdom into the fabric of society. It's the teacher who stays late to tutor a struggling student, the nurse who comforts a dying patient with no family, the stranger who pays for a single mother's groceries without waiting for thanks. These are the quiet architects of the future. Your challenge starts small but seismic. This week, perform one anonymous good deed, not for content or credit, but as an experiment in ego dissolution. Leave a book on a park bench with a handwritten note: "For whoever needs this." Tape coins to a laundromat dryer with the message, "Your next load's on me." Donate blood without posting the bandage selfie. The goal isn't to be seen doing good, but to let goodness radiate untethered from your identity. Because here's the secret Epictetus knew: legacy isn't built in grand gestures announced with fanfare, but in the invisible threads of kindness that outlast memory. The Stoics didn't chase immortality, they cultivated it through daily acts that whispered forward through time. Your name may fade, but the warmth you leave in the world, that's eternal. Musonius Rufus didn't just lecture about philosophy, he sweated it. The Stoic teacher insisted his students train their bodies with the same rigor as their minds, declaring, "How can a weak vessel carry a strong soul?" 2,000 years later, modern biohackers are catching up to his wisdom, measuring heart rate variability and cold plunge protocols like ancient texts. But here's where the Stoics differed. They didn't see fitness as a vanity project or life hack, but as moral duty. Your body wasn't a temple to be polished for Instagram. It was the forge where discipline was hammered into daily practice. Take David Goggins, the ultramarathon runner and former Navy SEAL who pushes his limits with brutal 4 a.m. workouts. His routine isn't about chiseled abs, it's about confronting pain to prove that most limits are mental. When his alarm blares in the dead of night and every cell screams to hit snooze, that's stoicism in motion. Musonius would nod approvingly. He prescribed farm labor for his city-dwelling students, not to grow crops but to grow grit. Modern science confirms the mind-body link. Studies show that people who exercise regularly display greater emotional resilience, as if lifting weights also strengthens willpower. Now contrast this with today's optimization culture. Bulletproof coffee, nootropics, and sleep trackers promise peak performance, but often become obsessions that displace actual effort. The Stoics would call this misplaced energy. Seneca warned against preparing for life instead of living it, a jab that could have been aimed at the guy with 12 supplements but 0 push-ups. The point wasn't to reject progress, but to anchor it in purpose. Cold showers aren't virtuous because they burn fat. They're valuable because they teach you to act despite discomfort. Your challenge starts with one upgrade, not a complete overhaul. Pick the weak link in your daily chain. Maybe it's the midnight snack that leaves you groggy, the skipped walks, or the screen scrolling that steals sleep. Now apply Musonius' 3-step test. First, identify the rational excuse, I'm too tired to cook. Second, expose the self-deception, but I have energy for TikTok. Finally, engineer the obstacle out. Prep healthy snacks on Sundays. Charge your phone outside the bedroom. The goal isn't perfection, it's proving to yourself that small disciplines compound. Elite athletes know this secret. Their training peaks aren't about grand gestures, but about nailing the basics with obsessive consistency. Marathoner Eliud Kipchoge doesn't win races on flashy tactics. He dominates by perfecting his stride, his sleep, even his chewing thousands of tiny optimizations that add up to greatness. That's the Stoic body in action, not chasing trends but mastering fundamentals. Your first 5 push-ups today might feel insignificant, but they're the foundation of a mindset that refuses to quit when life gets heavy. Because here's the truth Musonius Rufus carved into stone. Physical resilience isn't just about surviving life's storms. It's about learning to dance in the rain while carrying the weight of your dreams. Seneca watched the scholars of Rome rush through scrolls like men drowning in shallow water, busy but never deep. His warning still echoes across 2,000 years. Life is long if you know how to use it. What would he make of our modern illusion of productivity, where we pride ourselves on juggling notifications while half listening to podcasts and drafting emails? The average office worker now switches tasks every 3 minutes, not because it's effective, but because we've mistaken motion for progress. A Stanford study revealed that chronic multitaskers perform worse on cognitive tests than their focused peers, as if their brains have been sanded down by constant distraction. Take the myth of the productive morning routine, checking messages during breakfast, scanning news while commuting, and hopping between spreadsheets in meetings. We call this efficiency, but the Stoics would call it fragmentation. Like a farmer scattering seeds across a dozen fields, we end up nurturing nothing to harvest. Contrast this with the deep focus of someone like author Cal Newport, who writes in 90-minute blocks with his phone locked in another room. His output isn't just greater in volume, it's richer in insight, as if each undisturbed hour compounds in quality. Here's the experiment that changes everything: the single tasking hour. Not a vague intention to focus, but a sacred 60 minutes where you do one thing with monastic devotion. If you're writing, your hands stay on the keyboard. If you're strategizing, your notebook remains open. No alt-tabbing to check scores, no quick social media breaks. At first, it'll feel like holding your breath underwater. Your mind will thrash for distraction like a diver gasping for air. But around minute 18, something shifts. Thoughts deepen, solutions surface. You'll experience what psychologists call flow state, where time distorts and ideas fuse like atoms under pressure. Now for the surgical strike. Open your phone's app usage data and find the one application that's hijacking your attention most ruthlessly. Maybe it's the endless scroll of TikTok, the outrage engine of Twitter, or even the deceptively professional Slack pings after hours. Don't just move it to a folder, obliterate it. The first 72 hours will feel like phantom limb syndrome, your thumb reflexively tapping where the icon once lived. But soon, you'll notice the mental space clearing like fog lifting. Seneca didn't have apps, but he grasped their danger when he wrote, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." Digital minimalism isn't about rejecting technology. It's about reclaiming your cognitive sovereignty. Picture two blacksmiths. One constantly darts between forge, bellows, and anvil, while the other stays fixed, hammering the same blade until it gleams. Both are busy, but only one crafts masterpieces. Your mind works the same way. Every time you resist the ping, you're not just avoiding distraction, you're forging the willpower to build something lasting. The invitation isn't to disconnect from the modern world, but to engage with it on terms that don't fracture your attention like broken glass. So tonight, as you charge your devices, ask Seneca's question, did I live today or just react? Tomorrow, let your single-tasking hour be the chisel that carves meaning from the marble of time. The world will still buzz outside your focus, but inside that sacred space, you'll discover what the Stoics knew. Depth isn't found in the shallows. Epictetus sat in his lamplit study, a former slave teaching emperors, and scribbled one of history's most counterintuitive truths. Freedom isn't the absence of constraint, it's the art of navigating them with grace. That's the paradox of control in a nutshell. Total command comes not from bending the world to your will, but from mastering your response to what you can't bend. Consider the Serenity Prayer, a staple in recovery programs that echoes Stoic wisdom. Grant me the serenity to accept what I cannot change, courage to change what I can, and wisdom to know the difference. At first glance, it sounds passive until you realize the radical agency hidden within. Acceptance isn't surrender, it's the foundation for strategic action. Take Laura, a breast cancer survivor who channeled this balance into healing. When diagnosed, she raged against the unfairness until her therapist asked a stoic question. What part of this is yours to command? Not the tumor, not the treatment side effects, but her daily choices. Showing up for her kids' soccer games bold and unapologetic, using her medical leave to finally write that novel, even finding dark humor in wigs she named after famous dictators. Her journal from that time reads like an Epictetus manual. Today I vomited 6 times, but I chose the playlist Bowie Wins Over Bile. Laura didn't beat cancer by pretending it wasn't brutal. She survived by directing her energy where it could actually make waves. This duality plays out in everyday battles too. Imagine 2 employees facing layoffs. One obsesses over the CEO's decisions, drafting angry LinkedIn posts. The other audits their skills, updates their portfolio, and schedules coffee chats actions within their control. Both might still get cut, but the second walks away with stronger prospects and less emotional whiplash. Modern psychology confirms this approach. Studies on locus of control show that people who focus energy on actionable steps rather than unchangeable circumstances report lower stress and higher resilience. Your turn, grab paper and draw 2 circles. Label the inner one, my arena. The things you directly influence, your effort, your attitude, your boundaries. The outer circle, the world's playground, market crashes, others' opinions, flight delays. Now pick one frustration sitting in the outer ring. Maybe it's a relative's toxic behavior or a bureaucratic hurdle at work. For 30 seconds, really let yourself feel the resistance, that this shouldn't be happening. Then shift gears. Given this reality, what's one move I own? That tiny pivot is where Stoic acceptance transforms from philosophy to power. The ancient sailors understood this balance instinctively. They couldn't command the winds, but they could master sail adjustments. Your life's gales will still blow, but with Epictetus' compass, you'll spend less energy cursing the storm and more navigating toward calmer waters. The paradox isn't just that surrender empowers you, it's that true control begins where your resistance ends. Seneca ended each day in a ritual more transformative than any productivity hack, a practice he called his evening audit. Picture this. The great philosopher, bathed in lamplight, reviewing his day not with self-criticism, but with the detached curiosity of a scientist examining data. What evils did you cure today? He'd ask himself. What weaknesses resist your medicine? This wasn't just journaling, it was cognitive surgery, dissecting the day's events to extract wisdom. Fast forward to today's bullet journal craze, color-coded trackers, and Instagram-worthy spreads that often prioritize aesthetics over actual insight. The difference. Seneca didn't care about pretty pages, he cared about progress. Modern research validates his approach. A Harvard study found that employees who spent just 15 minutes reflecting on their workday improved performance by 23% compared to those who didn't. But here's where the Stoic method diverges from typical gratitude logs. While listing 3 good things has value, Seneca went deeper. He hunted for friction. That awkward conversation where he lost patience, that was gold. The moment he procrastinated on a letter, a clue, like a detective solving the mystery of his own behavior, he knew growth lived in the discomfort zones. Try this 3-question drill tonight, Stoicism stripped to its practical core. First, where did I act with virtue today? Not achievement, virtue. Maybe you listened fully instead of planning your rebuttal, or chose integrity over convenience. Second, where did I surrender to weakness? No shame, just observation. Did you snap at a colleague to mask insecurity? Scroll mindlessly to avoid hard work? Third, the pivot. What's one micro adjustment for tomorrow? Not a grand resolution, but a tactical tweak. If you wasted 30 minutes on emails, maybe tomorrow you'll batch them post-lunch when willpower dips. The magic lies in the sequence. Most self-improvement starts with fix what's broken, breeding discouragement. Seneca flipped it: strengths first, then growth areas, then action. It's like a coach reviewing game footage. Here's the winning play, here's where we got tackled, here's how we adjust. Psychologists call this positive to negative interaction ratio, the 5-to-1 balance of affirmations to corrections that builds resilience. Forget leather-bound journals or perfect penmanship. Grab a napkin, a voice memo, even a bathroom mirror scrawled with soap. The medium doesn't matter, the interrogation does. Because when you make this ritual habitual, something shifts. You start living your days as if you'll need to account for them later, not to some higher power, but to your own unwavering standards. That's the Stoic secret. The evening review isn't just about assessing the day, it's about architecting the next one. Let's pause for a moment and reflect on the journey we've taken together. From the moment we first considered Seneca's cold showers to Marcus Aurelius' evening reflections, one truth has emerged with crystalline clarity. Stoicism isn't about enduring life, it's about mastering it. Every obstacle you've faced, every frustration that's kept you awake at night, every challenge that's made your hands shake, these aren't barriers to your growth. They're the raw materials for building unshakable resilience. Think of the last time you felt overwhelmed. What if, in that very moment, you'd had the Stoic toolkit at your fingertips? The clarity to separate what's yours to control from what isn't, the courage to act despite fear, the perspective to see setbacks as stepping stones. That's the transformation this philosophy offers, not just survival, but sovereignty over your own life. The beauty of Stoic wisdom lies in its brutal simplicity. You don't need a library of scrolls or a mentor whispering secrets. The power was always within you, waiting to be unlocked by 3 fundamental shifts: commanding your focus like a general directing troops, bending without breaking like bamboo in a storm, and reframing every challenge as fuel for your fire. Consider the single parent working 2 jobs who uses commute time for language learning instead of despair, the entrepreneur who treats investor rejections as data points rather than defeats. These aren't superhumans, they're people who have tapped into the same Stoic principles you now hold. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king who guided Rome through plague and war, left us this battle cry: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Let those words sink in. Your potential isn't determined by your circumstances, but by how you choose to meet them. That's the ultimate Stoic revolution, recognizing that while you can't control every wave, you can always learn to surf. Now, here's your mission. Before this video ends, pick one Stoic principle to weaponize this week. Maybe it's the premeditation of adversity, visualizing challenges before they strike. Perhaps it's the dichotomy of control, writing down what's yours to command and ceremoniously burning the rest. Or maybe it's as simple as starting each morning like Seneca, whispering, "This day is a gift, what will I do with it?" The key isn't perfection, it's practice. Every cold shower endured, every impulsive reaction paused, every obstacle reframed is a brick in the fortress of your resilience. If this wisdom resonated with you, imagine what's possible when we go deeper. Hit subscribe and join a community transforming pressure into power, one Stoic hack at a time. Your future self, the one who'll face life's storms with calm eyes and steady hands, is waiting. The journey begins now.